Let me text them. How far away?
Well, last Sunday I have 3.
3 people came by?
Yeah.
Okay. Someone want to write an offer or what?
No. But at least keep the context and then, I say, okay, I'll follow up what else you can give again. Suits today,
Yeah.
different.
Yeah. Okay, which can go with red. You guys doing good? So they were talking about working with, bless you,
Especially.
working with buyers and sellers, right? And then making and receiving offers. So these all kind of like go in one piece because hopefully if you're working with buyers, they're actually submitting offers. And then if you're working with sellers because you have a listing, then you're going to be receiving offers, right? So let's talk for a second about like what goes into a good offer. And remember, we're going to talk about like what's average, what's good, what's great, and then what's elite. What's going to go into like the presentation for an elite offer. So what are the things that we for sure 100% need in an offer? Like super basic. Purchase price. We'll talk about this in a second. This is obviously a big important one. And remember, for all of these, right? Anytime that you're interacting with a buyer or seller, or anytime that you're interacting with an agent, right? Everything's on a spectrum. So we're going to talk about like all the different spots that we can land on the spectrum, right? So let's talk about like on the downside, the bad side. On the offer spectrum, what would a bad offer look like? Low purchase price, right? So the property is $2 million we're dealing with. Who can talk about measure ULA? Who knows what that is? No one? And who voted yesterday? Okay, did you vote for it or against it?
Explain what it is, and then I read what it was.
Okay, so measure ULA is also being referred to as a mansion tax. This is a hot topic of conversation in the real estate. Okay. You're gonna guess? Did you vote?
No.
Okay. Did you vote yesterday? Did you vote for ULA?
I think so, yes.
Okay, are you in favor of it or are you opposed to it?
Let's be second just
Okay.
for the mind.
So here's how ULA works. Right, we're gonna talk about this for a hot minute because this is like gonna be a big topic of conversation, okay? So here are the key factors. It's in LA City only. So if you're gonna sell a property in Encino, does this apply? Yes. Okay. So Encino, Brentwood, Venice, all these neighborhoods are LA City, right? If you're not sure, click layers on the MLS and it's gonna carve out and show you where it all is, right? So it applies in LA City. Does it apply in Beverly Hills? No. Does it apply in West Hollywood? No. Will stuff like this come to those communities? My guess is no. But in LA City, this applies, okay? For properties that are sold And it doesn't specify residential property or commercial property, it just says piece of property gets sold, right? If it's sold for 5 million to 10 million, there's a new 4% tax. Tax. If it's sold for more than 10 million,
Tax on the seller.
there's a at point of sale, it's a 5.5% tax. It doesn't matter, it passed.
Impact.
It passed. Okay, and it passed by like thousands and thousands and thousands of votes. Because the people that vote for this stuff, and what percentage of people in LA City own a home or a property that's worth more than $5 million? Tiny, tiny, tiny percentage, right? But for realtors, this really sucks if you sell property in this range, right? So we're gonna talk about like working with sellers, right? And commission is a big piece of this. We're gonna talk about working with buyers, because for some buyers and some communities and some cultures, your commission is a
If
part
the
of.
seller live there for forever, they still have to pay the full.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. If it sells for more than that, I wrote this little small. So 5 million to 10 million. So we gotta iron some things out to see exactly how this is gonna get calculated, who's gonna make sure this money gets collected, like, or you know, what's gonna happen, right? But new law, big change, because your developer buys a big piece of land somewhere and they're ready to build this mega mansion and they're gonna sell for $20 million. Someone do the math on me or for me. We do a $20 million home. What's 5.5% of 20 million?
$1,100,000.
What is it? How much, guys? 20 million.
5.20 million times
0.055. $1.1 million.
Has to be paid. And it has to pay agents.
It's paid at closing. So if you're a luxury real estate agent, like my homie Sally Foster Jones, who sells a lot of this stuff, this is a big deal. Because you're already talking to these people, like typically when you sell these homes, these people aren't getting 5%, right? On a $20 million home. It's not like a $1.5 million home, right? So this is coming straight off of your client's bottom line. It's just pure profit at the end that comes out. Yeah.
if Rick gets elected, this won't hurt him as well.
Rick can't do anything about this. Hopefully he gets elected. He's winning right now,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah,
like,
2%, right?
yeah, it's like slowly growing a little bit, we hope. Right? I don't know. Like I'm not gonna say anything, because I really want Rick to win, but can't do anything about this. This went to vote. This is a city council idea. Someone put this on the ballot as a measure. And so like this is passed. And so why do we really think that this passed? Did they call this the let's tax the rich people measure? It kind of loosely got called the mansion tax. But the short story is that really democratic, liberal cities, when they don't do, this is my opinion, right? When they don't do a good job with the money that they have, and they need more money for the programs and agendas that they support, they do things like this. Yes.
Is it also true, which it is true, that if you were in like Northern European, Western European country, you would.
I don't know anything about Northern Western Europe. you would pay more taxes? Yeah, like France. But like, if are you just talking about income tax?
Denmark, all this type of shit.
Yeah, in most of those countries in
Yeah, they
Europe,
pay much higher tax.
you pay much higher taxes because you also have universal health care. There are other things, property taxes, change from country to country.
They also pay the students to go to school too.
I don't know.
I do.
Okay. That's not pertinent for this.
I'm
So
just saying that.
if your point is that some other countries have other taxes and
Right,
offer
they
other
would hire
services,
tax
sure,
rates that we do.
yeah,
That's what I'm saying.
maybe. I don't know. Some countries probably have less. If you go to Dubai, it's probably the nicest place in the world that you can go to.
But it's terrible for women.
Okay, so Ignite politics, we're gonna move away from. This got voted in and is a real thing that realtors will deal with here. So even in the $5 million spectrum, like we're talking about whole neighborhoods, right? That all of a sudden, if you sell, right, like we're super close to the flats. Like I've got a buddy who just with some partners bought a piece of land in the flats for $7 million. So like every home there now for every homeowner is gonna have at least a 4% tax. Many of them would be more if they sold it. Okay. By when's exactly does it start? How does that work? Like, not really sure. But this is a big conversation in the real estate community. Okay. And you guys should, as next year starts to roll around, you're looking in like August, September, October, get up to date on this stuff. Because I cannot tell you how many conversations I've had with people at dinner or friends of friends or whatever about this stuff. Not so many of my friends own property like this, right? But conversations about it.
What was the question on the election yesterday for this?
Measure ULA.
Well, maybe-
Yes or no? Are you in favor of it or against it? And guess what? There's a lot of people in LA City that don't really care. People that own this type of property have to pay more money. Yes,
Now this tax, they take it and then do we know what they eventually do with the money?
it's supposed to go for transitional, affordable, low-income housing and to fight the homelessness
Oh, okay.
crisis,
Okay.
right? I think both of our mayors referred to it as a crisis, right? I used to live downtown. I lived downtown during COVID, and it was a crisis downtown. So every once in a while, when the city or the state or federal government need money, right, they impose new taxes or they raise taxes, right? And predominantly, historically speaking, when communities need more money, they tend to go get it from the smaller group of people that have a disproportional amount of wealth.
That's not fair.
That's a matter of opinion. Right? I'm saying historically speaking, the data supports communities voting against people effectively that have a lot of money to support these programs and ideas. Okay, so Measure ULA, you should get very informed on. Rick Caruso, right? Looks like he's gonna win. If you guys don't know about him and his history and his past as a real estate developer, you should learn, right? Like we left last week talking about how Tim Smith, the super successful agent, right, in Laguna Beach and like coastal OC, said when he was in his 20s, it was all about data, right? That's how he used to secure business. When he was in 30s, it was all about sales, how many sales he had, his volume, stuff like that. And then now it's all about stories, right? So someone asked me really recently, like, how do I like continue these conversations with the people I meet, right? And the answer is that you have to have good stories, right? So like off the top of your head, someone brings this up, you should be ready to go, yeah, 20 million bucks, $1.1 million, it's a new tax. It's only in LA City. So if you own in Santa Monica, is it actually Santa Monica proper? Or are you like south of the 10, technically like Ocean Park, kind of LA City, where you're gonna have to have this tax?
What about Glendale?
Glendale is not Los Angeles City.
Oh, this tax is only for Los Angeles city.
It's only LA City
So Beverly Hills.
for
is-
now.
Okay.
You know, I don't know. Yeah, so Beverly Hills, right? It's a good example. I was wrong. Beverly Hills doesn't have these taxes.
Yeah.
Okay, so get up to date on ULA, right? Because Tim Smith, a much better agent than me, right, he makes more money than God, right? Says like having stories or how you secure offer, like how you work with buyers and sellers.
So it would definitely include Bel Air. Bel Air is part of Los Angeles.
Yes, LA is LA City.
But sometimes. I
Holmby
go-
Hills,
Oh,
LA City.
But sometimes I go to open houses and those houses up there like 70, 80, some of them 90.
Yeah. So Jeff Bezos decides to exit his $150 million property that he bought a couple years ago, like he's gonna have to pay.
That's a home deal.
Yeah, it's no
What about, you know where the Getty is? What side is that? Brentwood?
Brentwood, LA City, Brentwood, Studio City, all Tarzana, and you know, all LA City, LA City, LA City. Okay, don't let your clients confuse neighborhoods for cities. A lot of people think Venice is a city, just not. Okay, so catch up on ULA. I'll get off my soapbox in a second. Like, but every year when these propositions and measures come around, inform yourself of it. It's a really easy conversation. It's like, you can find it online, you can see what you think is good about it, if you think is bad about it, form your own opinion, right? And then see how that can work its way into conversations with clients.
That's for 5 million or more properties. Right?
5 to 10, 4%. 10 plus, 5.5%.
Anything under, there's no tax?
No.
Okay, so
Just the standard county transfer and all that other stuff.
4%, 5 to 10 million, and then 10 another 5 to 5.5.
Yep. Okay. So. Is that gonna change some people's underwriting? Yeah, okay, but when we know that now there's a new 5%, or let's just say 4% tax, how's that gonna change your conversation about commission?
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, it's, hey, I know that I can give you 5%, now I gotta give the city 5%. You know, or if it's $5 million right there, I got a client that I've been working with for a really long time, property's probably worth 4.5. Next time I talk to him, okay, get out. But also, instead of like, you know, when we go to exchange them into something else, are we gonna look at $5 million stuff? Like, it's gonna handcuff them a little bit, it's gonna be harder to pencil, right? If we're gonna exit that $5 million property. Okay, so let's talk for a second about like, because having conversations with buyers and sellers on commission, okay, takes a lot of practice, it's tough to do, okay? We'll get back to our spectrum in a second. What are some challenges to working with buyers? Go ahead,
Them getting pre-approved.
getting pre-approved, right? So I said, in my opinion, the best way to work with buyers is to front load all of the work as much as you can. Get as much of that stuff done, you know, as you can, right? Pre-approval, right? Time can be a challenge. Okay, in what ways can time be a challenge working with buyers?
They want to see a lot of properties, they're not sure which areas they're looking for, they're like trying to fit your schedule to their schedule, they want to see a lot of options.
Yeah, okay. They can be demanding hours. Okay, they can be at odd hours. Do any of you guys have a super lockbox yet? And super lockbox is something that you're gonna wanna get, right? So if you have clients that are buying or selling stuff that's like lower price point, or you're working with someone who's going into a community where like the homes are 800, maybe 900, or like 950, $1 million or something like that. It's very, very commonplace that listing agents, after maybe like the first week or second week, will put that home on a lockbox, right? And they'll use, in most cases, a Supra, this is a little registered sign, right? A super lockbox, that's the name of the actual company. It's a special lockbox that you can use for realtors that is associated with Bluetooth. So if I, like I just helped a buddy buy a house for like 900 grand in West Adams, right? And when we went touring around with him, almost every property was on super lockbox. Because the listing agent is not just gonna shuttle back and forth from all his or her other listings for this $900,000 house, right? If it were a $9 million home, do you think they just put it on super lockbox and you can just go in there and like walk around and like mess around in there and then you got the keys now? Like that's not how it works, right? But it can be, it was very demanding for me trying to meet them at all these different listings all the time. And if it was on a super lockbox, I had to be there, right? It's an open house and I'm working with some other buyer or seller and I couldn't like make it work. That's okay. They can go see it at the open house. But if it's on super lockbox and they're not doing open houses because it's been on the market for a little bit, I would have to go with them every time, right? Or I'd send my assistant to go with them every time, okay? So we'll talk about commission. We'll talk about pre-approval. We've kind of covered that. Time. It can be demanding hours, odd hours, or if it's a super lockbox. What else is something that, you know, we haven't really touched on that we're going to talk about a lot right now? I'm going to say differing opinions. For me, this is the most challenging part of my process when I'm working with buyers because I'm trying to get all this stuff done on the front end that I can handle. I want to get, like, we start with all these properties. I'm going to funnel it down into this neighborhood, into these price point, these homes that are this size, right? But what if I'm working with a husband or wife, right? And the wife wants shiny, brand new, turnkey, because it's been my experience, that's what most women are attached to, and it feels like home when you walk in there, it's more comfortable, it's nicer, you know, and it's also just been my experience, it's not always the case, that like most of the guys are looking for a little bit more value, they think they could do the cabinets, you know, or whatever, right? How you deal with this, right, differing opinions can be really tough, you know, with these buyers that I just worked with. You know, I knew the budget's around 900 grand, but that's a tiny 2-2 bungalow in Culver that's going to need a bunch of work, right? Which is kind of property that I would buy for myself if I were looking for a single family home. I'd find something where I could add a little bit of square feet, you know, whatever, because I want a good deal, I want good value, right? He was looking for a flip, pre-flip, and she was looking for a post-flip. So what that did to my price per square feet and the neighborhoods and everything, it made it like very difficult at times to try and figure this out and manage it, right? So sometimes you can end up being like a little bit of a psychologist, right? Like trying to hear people's feelings, what's important to them and figuring that out. But the best thing I've ever heard was from like a mentor of mine that's a big agent. So like for buyers, like you really need to inform them.
Is that the same as educated?
It's a little bit different than educating. I would say like informing, and where that's a good question, but where I would draw the distinction is like educating would be like, in my mind, that means like I'm explaining how something works to you more than like giving you data sets or information so that you can draw your own opinion from it. You know what I mean? Like if I was going to inform you about the menu at the restaurant, I would give you the menu. Say like, this is what's on the menu. This is what you can do. You look at your own prices, you whatever. But maybe if you said like, well, explain the difference between a ribeye and a New York strip, then I would say like, that's a little bit more educational, right? And I think the time for that really is when you get into escrow.
So you informing buyers for the options basically.
Yeah. right? And I said like, my suggestion when you're working with buyers, is take them to go see 10 open houses, right? That I look at that as like, this is an informational process. We're gonna take you out here. This is the price. This is the house. This is the price. This is the house. This is the price. This is the house. This is the price of the house. And once we get out of that first weekend where I've kind of like just kind of shown them anything and everything on the market, we've talked about everything, then I think I would start to do like some explanation and some teaching. We're gonna get into this more in the second half of today, right? Which is like placing and receiving offers, right? But this all kind of blends into like one big piece. So working with buyers, talk about commission, pre-approval, times that can be tough. For me, the differing opinions is for someone that's a little bit more like analytical, right? And something about my personality, I can be a little bit stubborn sometimes. And sometimes when people are stubborn, they get a little impatient, right? So like it's something that I constantly want to work on and improve, right? But in this situation, we had the husband looking for a pre-flip. Let's just, instead of, let's put 10% down. Let's get something for $750 in a little bit nicer neighborhood. We've got some extra cash left over to, renovate it and move it around. But their fiancés and they had a wedding coming up. She's like, I don't want to deal with any of that stuff, right? So working with differing opinions and outlining everything, like I said, we talk about this funnel, right? And like the best thing that you can do is to inform them, but let them make their own opinions and draw their own conclusions. So you never ever want to walk a buyer through a home and say like, this kitchen's too small, or look at how big this living room is, because for them, that might not be a big living room. Like for me, I'm a big living room person. I played football in college. I love watching football. Like if there's not a 12-foot couch with like 2 sectional things and a big coffee table and a huge TV, then like the living room is too small for me. It doesn't matter what the rest of the house is. So take them through on that first weekend, inform your buyers. This is the price per square foot in this neighborhood, right? If they ask you why and they want some follow-up and they want to understand why some neighborhoods are more desirable, they ask you like a detailed high-level question, then that's where you want to get to. You want to get to the point where your clients are asking your opinion, right? So informing buyers is how you help to get all these options down into like a funnel for them. Also, what I really like to do, I'm gonna call, let's go ahead and number these, 2, 3 times, 4 different opinions are difficult. 5, right? Inexperience is difficult to deal with. Right? Because they're gonna ask you questions that you might have assumed that they knew the answer to these things. Like, how long is escrow going to be? What does this actually look like? And so my favorite thing on my 10 open house tour, usually they're wiped out, like they've been arguing about this backyard is too small, this backyard's too big, this is more than I wanted to spend, this is too far away from where the doggy daycare is. Like, you're going to hear all of these opinions when we do this big tour, right? My favorite thing to do at the end of this day is to write an offer. So we're going to talk about what goes into a good offer and a bad offer and all that other stuff the second part of the day, right? But why do you guys think that my favorite thing to do with these people is to write an offer?
Get them tied down, and at some point they may see out of those 10 pockets something that they actually like.
Yeah, they might really like one of these, but even if they don't, right? Or even if they're like, wow, we have some things that we really need to think about, right? I'm getting more of the explaining and front end work in here. It's also like a strong buying signal for them, right? If you submitted 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 offers, your buyers will start to feel like we're getting close, you know, or that like now we know when we're ready to go, what we're willing to pay, right? It's also a good litmus test for me to know,
They're serious to buy or they're not.
are they
"Oh, I want to
serious?
see
How
something."
difficult is this gonna be? You know, like I get them pre-approved and my guy Brian says, yeah, man, they're good. They're good up to 1.5 million. And we're looking at homes in the 900 range. I'm like, this is gonna be a slam dunk. And we go through the open houses and they go, you know what? He goes, I like this one. She says, I like this one. Like, okay, guys, but as part of like the process here, let's go ahead and write an offer, right? Even if we don't submit it or send it in, right? Like, I'm gonna be able to walk you through all these different pieces, right? We're gonna talk about contingency timelines. We're gonna talk about requests for repairs and how that works. We're gonna talk about the appraisal. It's basically like a dry run, right? For what it's gonna look like when they ultimately buy something. Okay, but let's say we're good for up to $1.5 million, and I go, okay, cool, let's write this offer. And the buyer says, okay, it's on the market for 900. Let's go ahead and send it in 725. What alarms are going off in my brain?
This is too low, so we'll accept.
This is way too low. They're gonna be waiting for. I'm gonna be writing 100 offers with these people forever, and we're never gonna get to a point where they're gonna actually close on something, right? This is my practice test for when we're in the game. You know, like Josh uses this example all the time, and I actually like it, where he says like, you have to keep practicing. You practice. You role play when you do your cold calls for a reason. You practice underwriting. You put together practice listing presentations. You pretend that you're drafting up the description for a listing that you're gonna have, right? You don't want the first time when you're going to write offers with these clients for it to be like, we finally see the property that they want, they identify it quickly, I get in there on Tuesday, the broker's open and tell me you have to get here right now, they rush over, they love it, and then they go, yeah, well, we're presenting offers as they come in, we've got an open house this weekend, but I've got to sit there and walk my buyers through all of the points of the contract when it should be go time. We should be sending it in and giving an expiration date on it and saying like, hey, you've got 48 hours to get back to us. Like, we don't want our offer getting shopped. We want to open escrow before you go to the open house. The time to get in the nitty gritty with your clients is not then, right? It's before. Do the practice and let them have a good understanding of what they're signing up for before it's actually time to play. Make sense? Okay, so on our first open house weekend, we're seeing all the properties, get them to write an offer. Well, no, we're not ready. I totally understand. This is part of the process so that I can inform you as to like how this works, right? Like educating, I would say like exactly the details of what we're doing with these offers and how that's gonna work. So I'm gonna cover that later, okay? But get an offer out, right? This inexperience that your buyers have, if they're first time buyers, or maybe someone else, their parents helped them with the purchase last time, or a spouse, a husband or a wife happened to be a real estate agent in the past and they bought or sold something. If you're dealing with someone that's inexperienced, take them all the way through the process when it isn't gonna matter, right? Then you have some practice with these people. You know when you can lean on them a little bit, and there's certainly a time for that. So inexperience, write an offer. If you've got differing opinions, right? I tell them to sort it out. And I literally say, sort it out. And they'll be like, well, what do you mean, sort what out? I say like, I want you guys to work together, right? And I want you to come up with a rubric of most important to least important. One of the first deals I did was for a multifamily investor client of mine. His daughter daughter graduated from USC. It was like, we want to get her a condo in Brentwood. It was like, that is great, right? Like, we going around looking at condos in Brentwood. What's most important to the dad? Security, safety. Doesn't care. It's hard. It's like, if there's any way that someone could jungle gym climb parkour into her apartment or her condo, like done. No, like didn't even want a balcony. Can't climb up the side of the building where there's nothing in there into that window, and then we locked up the window. So like security between the two of them, but what do you think she was saying?
I want the view, I want.
Oh, Dad, come on, no, it's like backs up to the Ralphs. Like I want a view. I want to see trees. Like, have you ever been to Brentwood? It's not just trees everywhere for the little condos, right? She wanted to be closer to Whole Foods and Core Power. It was like she could have like stamped. It was like you are a prototype, right? Real estate investor daughter. But for her, security was not really a concern. She's like, I used to see people when I was at SC that were like shady all the time. People's cars would get broken into and stuff like that. Like, and I wanted to tell the dad, like, USC is in Watts, right? Like, this, now you're going to be in Brentwood. Like, the crime factor is not the same, but let them sort that out, right? Or else you're going to end up being like, okay, well, we've got these 9 things that are important, like view and
Parking.
parking's a good one. Distance to Whole Foods, right? But not too far away. Distance from Core Power Yoga, right? Parking. And
City center.
what's that?
She wants to be like city center.
Yeah, something like that. So parking was one. Then we needed laundry in the unit. Right? And she wanted a pool, but not one of the like 1970s or 80s where like the building hangs over the pool. You know what I mean? We need a pool with sun. I go, well, if we're gonna get all 9 of these, we're above your budget of $850. So what's gotta go? It's not this isn't my property. I'm not buying this for myself. The pool ended up being the one that's left, right? I thought the pool was really important. I stopped looking at buildings that didn't have pools. And where we ended up buying, no pool, but super secure, newer construction, side-by-side parking, right? Like, so identifying this and figuring out, like, I learned really quickly, we can't get something for $850 that meets all these criteria. So to save myself time and to make sure that I don't lose face with the clients, what if I'm showing them stuff that doesn't work for the daughter? She'd be like, this agent sucks. What if I'm showing them stuff that doesn't work for the dad? They're gonna be like, this agent sucks. And it's not my fault. I just didn't get clear on exactly what was most important for them, right? And so I say, hey, look, you guys will sort it out, right? To help me do a better job searching property and analyzing property for you, right? I've got to get a really good understanding of between the two of you, what's most important, right? When we're facing 5 properties, right? And they're in 5 different neighborhoods and you want to go see them all, that's not going to work, right? So help me do a better job identifying the properties that are going to make you the happiest, right? They're going to satisfy all of your greatest desires, right?
I have a question. So if in the end of the day, daughters say like, oh, this I like the most, and the father say, I like this the most. You write 2 offer and like say like, okay, we're gonna write like 2 offer and let's see what's going on, or?
No, you don't want to do that because then you're just basically encouraging this disparity. You know, like, and that's a good question. A lot of, she was saying like, well, what do? Do you write an offer on one that the dad likes and one that the daughter likes?
You will write 2 different offer for like.
And my answer is no. You don't want to get into a point where because you don't want to give the buyers this habit of submitting an offer on something that they're not gonna close on,
Okay,
right? Because you go into escrow, you go out of escrow, you go into escrow, you go out of escrow, and now what's happened? The super wealthy father's decided, you know what, well, let's start looking at everything more like $1 million. Right? Or the mom gets involved and now it's $1.5 million. Right? And I've been like, okay, now, and the brother's gonna move in when he goes to SC, and so now we're 3 beds, you know, it's just, you want to keep the funnel. At every interaction, you're trying to get closer and closer and closer and tighter and tighter and tighter to what they actually really want, right? So someone's inexperienced, show them everything, actually have them sign the offer. It's gonna come in DocuSign. There's 3 big disclosures in the front of the offer. There's a few disclosures at the bottom of the offer. It looks like a lot, right? Let's go ahead and go through it. We're gonna submit an offer. I'm not gonna send it into the agent, but this is good practice for you guys. You're gonna feel more prepared and ready to go when we find something that you like. Because you did this, now they're looking at this property like, oh, good, do we write an offer? Like, should we write an offer? Is something that I get a lot with first-time buyers. I'm like, this isn't, you don't need to be nervous or anxious about this process, right? Like, but should we write an offer? They think writing an offer means we're buying it and that's it, right? And the best way that I have learned is to just have them go ahead and submit one and not turn it in. Have them draft up the offer and it's all ready to go. That way you're removing this understanding of the paperwork. You're taking that objection away, right? So that when they find the property, they don't feel like it's a big deal and they don't feel like the paperwork is intimidating on top of the purchase price. Make sense?
It's like reverse psychology.
It's like reverse psychology, right? Like, so I would say like, it's a tie down, right? You're trying to isolate all of these objections, right? And we're gonna do, there's a bunch of objections from sellers, right? We're gonna isolate all of these objections down into little things so that we can manage them and compartmentalize them.
So when you write the offer, you can just put it in a folder and never submit it?
Yeah, it sits in my email.
do they
So
know
what if
that?
they're like,
Oh, I'll tell them. Also, if they don't, and this is only if they object to this. Well, we didn't like any of those. Say, awesome, okay? Let's go ahead and submit an offer. And or I'll say like, well, let's go ahead and write an offer. I want to deliver it to the agent, right? That this only becomes an offer if the agent gets it.
okay, what if they're like, well, we actually want to do a follow-up? Do they accept our offer? And then you're like, oh.
Oh, no,
shoot.
I tell them I'm not going to give it to the agent.
Okay,
My suggestion is always to go ahead and write an offer
okay,
on the one you like the most at the number that you think makes sense. Overwhelming, 9 times out of 10, they're like, no, we didn't think we found the right one today, or we're nervous about writing an offer, or we're scared about how much it's gonna cost, whatever, right? But I say like, it's part of the process so that I can get you guys ready, right? And you feel informed and that you're making the decision when we find the one that you actually like.
okay.
So you should apply this method when they don't like the houses you show.
I try to get them to write an offer on something that I'm showing them, but most times in that first weekend where I'm showing them all these different places, it's an overwhelming process, you know? And but only if they like love one, you know, will they write an offer? And of course, we want them to write offers on the properties that we take them to, right? But more times than not, they're nervous about it. And I found out like, okay, well, we're gonna get to this when we talk about receiving offers and sellers and requests for repairs, because I'll touch on it really quickly. My favorite thing in the request for repairs is to go through the general inspection, all the reports, and then draft the request for repairs for them. To say, hey, this is my 2 cents, right? This is where we fall. This is what the strategy is going to look like. But hard stop, let's freeze. Before we get into this like back and forth negotiation, this like brawl that we're going to have with the sellers, I want you guys to, when your mind is clear, sit down and think about what your walk away number is. You were ready to buy this house at $2 million, right? We did the inspections, it looks like for you to really live in there, it's gonna cost $100,000.
And the inspector tells us that, right?
Yeah, the inspection report's gonna tell you all these different things, right? And you should all go to Kristen's class on request for repairs. That's like, you want your clients to be happy with you and recommend you to other people. They gotta feel good about the negotiations that you did to go back and get them some money or not, right? So the reason that I do that in the request for repairs is because I want them to feel like they had some time to make the decision about whether or not they wanted to move forward once we got to a certain point, right? Because if you don't put the brakes on this request for repairs conversation when you're dealing with a buyer, right? Then how it usually works is you see it on Saturday or Sunday, you write an offer, they counter all the offers on Monday or Tuesday, right? You get into escrow, or so maybe they paid a little bit more to win it and get into escrow. We find all this stuff that's wrong with the house, and we're getting tight on our timelines, and we send them a request for repairs for $100,000, and they send one back. Here's the contingency removal for you to remove your inspection contingency, and we're only gonna give you $10,000. And this is like Wednesday evening, right? Like, to put your buyers in that position where they're like, well, now we have to talk about this after a day's work, when we're on a tight timeline for our contingencies, when the sellers put us on a tight timeline. Like, that's not the clearest and easiest time to have those tough conversations about, hey, we're really excited about this house at $2 million, but like, there's $100,000 worth of work in there, and I don't understand why they're not gonna give it to us. Like, this is when the emotional stuff that makes it tough to be an agent that comes out when you're working with buyers and sellers, right? It always happens when someone gets surprised. When's the last time someone made you mad? For me, it was my wife this morning. She always takes the dogs out in the morning, very early. I get here super early, before way everybody else. And she gets up and goes to the gym. She takes the dogs out. I know I can just get up out of bed and get straight to the office and start working. She goes, oh, my Pilates class is at 5:15. Can you take the dogs out? And I was like, what the hell? No, I don't want to take the dogs out, but like, you are gonna miss your class, fine. I'm like dragging the dogs out in the dark. And I go to the bathroom and come in and drag and get in my car, drive over here, pissed off, like it took 4 minutes out of my day, you know? But I was mad because I was surprised by it.
But the day before, she will tell you tomorrow, I have a important class.
I got my backpack on, I'm stepping out the door. Go get the dogs out of the crates, make sure you put their stuff on, feed them, whatever, like, surprised, you know? And so like, the greater the surprise, right, and the less prepared you are for this information, the more visceral the response and reaction, right? What if she left and texted me and said, hey, I need you to go back and let the dogs out? Double mad. Same story, right? It wastes maybe an extra minute of my time, but my response and reaction to it, because of the timing, and now I'm like extra surprised because I'm in my car. You know, I'm like, now I gotta go back. Like, what are you talking about, right? So when your clients get surprised, whether they're buyers or sellers, that's when your job becomes increasingly difficult. Yeah.
So before you give them the list of repairs,
Mhm.
you have them tell you what number they would walk away with this house from?
Once they see the request for repairs.
Oh, okay.
So here's what I do. I get the request for repairs and I abstract it. I break it all down into like a nice, neat email for them to see, right? And I talk to them about the request for repairs in the subcontext of that email.
Okay, got it.
Okay? Because what you'll find is if you have clients buying an old house, right? And they look there and you have the roof guy up there, and the roof guy is gonna say, this chimney's 50 years old, it could fall in through the roof and kill the children in the living room, which is like something you guys will see and experience, right? And if you go to Kristen's class, I'm sure she'll like touch on the fact of like people saying like this chimney or the fireplace is like not in use. It's, you know, for like decoration. It's not, this isn't a, you know, like our, the requirements for a fireplace and a chimney today are not the same as they were back when all these homes were built. Let's say it's decorative. It's a decorative fireplace, which means like, we're just trying to set your expectation that we're not gonna give money back. So to answer your question, I'll get the request for repairs in, I draft, or the inspection reports, I draft an abbreviated version of it, right? So that when I talk to them, I know the scoop, right? The worst thing that you could do would be to say, here's the inspection report and just send it off. You just forward the inspection report to them. Because what are they gonna do? They're gonna go through and pick it apart and say like, well, this, we need to do this, we need to do that, we need 200 grand, or we need 250,000 back on this house. But instead I'll say like, hey, these are the things that kind of matter. You know, we want to do a good job distinguishing between repairs and upgrades. You know, you don't like the cabinets, the cabinets work, you know, like a big thing for this comes up with like water heaters and HVACs all the time, right? Like they're old, they're nearing the end of their useful life, they'll put in the report, but I'll abstract that all into one little thing. And I say, hey, this is my recommendation for what we go for and why. Before you look at the number, before we go through this, right? At the end of this, I'm gonna ask you guys what your walk away number is. They're gonna be like, well, what do you mean? They're like, well, it's Saturday afternoon, or it's Tuesday morning, or whatever, right? I'm gonna draft this request for repairs after our conversation, send it to the listing agent. And I wanna have a good idea of where you guys need to get to want to move forward. And a couple things happen when I do that. The first thing is they're like, well, what do you mean move forward? Like, of course, we're in escrow, we're buying the house, we want the house, you know? And so it kind of like disarms them a little bit to say like, and we talked about informing, that it was a really good question, informing or educating. It's like, I'm gonna inform you of how this is how it goes, right? Like this, we're gonna send them something, they're gonna be like, shh, no, and then they're gonna send something back, and then we can either send something back or they can send something again, and we can do 0 rounds of this, or I've been through 8 rounds of the request for repairs. But since we have time today, I want you to think about, you know, if you don't get a certain number back to fix some of these things, you know, are you prepared to cancel escrow and go shopping again? And they'll say, okay, it's $100,000 because we got to fix the foundation, we got to fix the roof, there's mold, and there's termites. You know, we got all 4 major problems. And like, if we don't get 60 grand, then we've decided that we're not comfortable moving forward. You want to get them to an actual number, because 10 times out of 10, or maybe 30 times out of 30 that have like gone through this process and it's been like really challenging, they're willing to accept a little bit less than they came up to, right? And so like, if they get surprised by the number and they say like, look, if we can't get 60 grand back, then we're gonna walk. And they're calm and they're collected when they say that, you're gonna have a lot more flexibility with those people than they're like, the request for repairs is due tomorrow, and you better not, and the listing agent saying, you better not send me something asking for $30,000. Like now you said like, hey, you said your number was 60, the listing agent's telling us that this is their best and final on the request for repairs, and it's at $30,000, then what we talked about was you guys walking away at this number, right? Like, it's a better time to have that conversation when they're not surprised by the process, right? Like, so I started off a little bit ago saying like, people get mad or they get upset or they have really bad responses when they get surprised, right? And so the front end work with your buyers right? Like, they don't know how the offer works, like, they're surprised by the counter that came back. Don't let them also be surprised by the amount of disclosures in the paperwork that they have to sign, right? If the dad and the daughter can't get on the same page because they have these differing opinions, right? We don't want them to be surprised when we find out that there's nothing on the market that meets all of their criteria, right? So all you're trying to do is mitigate bombs that are gonna go off, right? Like, let's take all the ticking time bombs out of this escrow or out of these negotiations or out of this process, right? And that's why I still think like, oh gosh, find a good lender, get them pre-approved right away. Because what if you get all the way down the road and then it turns out that someone had some bad credit and they didn't really share it with their spouse? Now you can't buy these types of homes. That's gonna be a bad surprise, right? So try to take the surprises away. Okay? For some clients, I have to talk about the commission right away. For some buyers I have in the investment community, it's like, look, I'm gonna show you deals, I'm gonna show you this stuff. If you come after my commission, that's it. It's over. I'll never talk to you again. You'll never get a deal from me. You'll never get a deal from anyone in my network. That's it. I stump this with buyers in the investment community right away because they will. They'll feel like if they can get some of your commission that they will, right? And especially with Measure EULA that just passed, you're doing a big deal and these sellers are gonna have to, pass. So, and the sellers are gonna have to pay the city this new 4%. Like, well, where am I gonna get this extra 2% from? How am I gonna get some of that 4% back? What do you think some of your sellers are gonna think in those price points? Maybe you do the commission for 1%. Maybe you do it for 1.5%. Because I gotta pay 1% here. Okay, so instead of making 5%, 2.5, 2.5. A lot of sellers in these price points are gonna be thinking like, instead of offering 5, can I do 3.5? Can I get kind of halfway there? Maybe 1.5 to listing agent and 2% to the buy side. I don't know. I don't know how a lot of these people are going to respond to these new taxes. Right? So working with buyers, I don't see the commission come up too often. If it does, right, it's because you're close to the request for repairs and it looks like you're getting ready to remove contingencies. And a lot of times agents, when you first get started, when you're working with people, or in my case, I give in fee a lot, right? If it's to close the deal, if it's to save me time, and I know it's gonna be a big check, then like a lot of times contributing $5,000 towards a $5 million property, it's gonna make someone feel more comfortable. When my gross commission's, $100,000, I'll give that $5,000 away like this. It's gonna get them to go non-contingent. Because alternatively, they might back out of that deal. I don't get it. They're gonna go buy something else, or there's no certainty in the investment side that they are gonna buy something, right? Because like they don't have the same motivations that they're moving, they need to get into a house that someone has in the residential. But if I'm working with a buyer right away, I'll work with and my clients that are investors know, like, don't touch my commission. If I show, and especially if I show you something off market, or I show you how this $2 million deal is actually worth 2.5, and we get down the road and you come for some of my money, that's it. No more. So the easiest way is to just draw hard lines when it comes to your commission. Say like the seller pays this.
That's for investors.
What's that? For investors, hard no, don't touch it. For residential clients, this particular guy was like, look, we're $6,000 apart on the request for repairs, right? How are we gonna close this gap? I'm talking to listing agent, $6,000. I'm like, on a $880,000 condo, we're only $6,000 apart. My client's drawn their line in the sand. Their client drew their line in the sand. They're like, okay, if you guys don't want to move forward, we'll send you a demand to close. We're gonna make you close, right? Or we're gonna kick you out of escrow, send you a notice to perform, right? And we did, we got the notice to perform over $6,000. So I called the listing agent, was like, hey, how about we do this? 1,500 from your clients, 1,500 from you, 1,500 from me, and 1,500 from the client, from my client. And now we're all in this together to close this $6,000 gap so we can close, because for the $1,500 for me, like without talking for anyone's amount of money and like talking for anyone's pocketbook, do I want to get this escrow canceled if it's over $1,500? I'm gonna spend another 30 hours probably with them looking at spaces and on some other escrow and whatever. And that's, so now 30 hours, like we're only talking about $50 an hour, right? For this short period of time, and I can just get this done. It's a tough conversation to have with your buyers. It's even tougher to have with your sellers.
What was the letter that they sent you?
And
Demand.
notice to perform.
What if you just don't wanna perform?
We're gonna talk about that here in like
Okay, cause I'm like,
10 minutes.
okay.
Yeah, we're gonna, yes?
So I met this lady over the weekend, I know her, she's friends with friends and looking to buy a house. I asked her, oh, are you pre-approved? She said, yes, 1.25.
Okay.
We're looking at this area, I'm like, great, are you working with this agent? And she said, actually, my partner, brother, he's an agent, but he doesn't have time for us. So we work with his assistant and she's looking for us for houses. But he told us that whatever we found, he will give us back 1.5% from his commission.
Because that's easy for him. He's gonna get 1%. His assistant's gonna do the work.
Yeah,
That's not a bad deal,
oh, so this is
For-
what I was
for
saying, you
him.
know,
right? And so then you said, what?
like I told her like it sounds reasonable and I have the time to invest, like help you shopping around. But she said like, yeah, but want this 1.5% back because it's already like very expensive for us. So what should be my next sentence? Because I didn't even want to say, oh, I will do it for 1%, because I will not do it for 1%, but
Can you make it worth 1% for you before you say the business is up?
can I make it what?
Can you make it worth 1% for you? And I will represent buyers for 1%.
For 1.25?
If, not for 1.25.
If they refer for other deals.
If they, I will shave it down to 1% like this. You go find the house yourself. If you get pre-approved by my guy, you find the house yourself, right? And we open escrow, inside 30 days, I'll do it for 1%.
So why do you not go with the assistant agent of your brother?
Because they're gonna get an assistant agent helping them instead of you. And is that worth it? How's that fit your business plan? So remember what I said about the request for repairs?
Yeah.
Right? You need, and this is the right time of year, right, to have a good business plan for next year. Right? If I'm ahead of schedule, right, like I am this year, I'm ahead of my goals and my plan for my business, right? And someone says, hey, John, like, what do you guys call me? Hey, I got this commercial deal, right? Can we split it? I'm gonna, in real fast, decide, is this worth my time to work this transaction, right? And if you're just getting started and this is like a person in your network and you have an opportunity to close something with them and they're gonna become a promoter for you, might be worth it. For me, I draw the line at, it's gotta be above $2 million. You have to get pre-approved by my guy.
Even if you got pre-approved with someone else?
Yep, don't care. Cause like,
And that eliminates the conversation. Just talk to
That's
the
it.
guy.
So you have three check boxes for 1%. Above 2 million,
Mhm.
pre-approved, under 30 days.
in escrow,
In escrow.
under 30 days. The fourth box is you find it yourself.
Oh, so they're four check.
I don't
If
know.
they found it, they can just call to his brother and still his brother get like something like.
You might be able to, you know?
Yeah.
So like, what you're asking me is a tough question, because you're like, should I do this or not?
Yeah.
And just like I said with the request for repairs, my decision making for the type of projects that I take on and when I take them on, when I decide to or not, is entirely dependent upon my business plan. If this is just gravy for me and you're pre-approved, you tour all the properties yourselves, it's over $2 million, right? Like, what are you, how much work are you gonna have to do for this person for the 20 grand?
Not a lot.
Run an escrow? I've got a TC that will handle the whole thing for $1,000. She'll show up to the inspection, she'll do everything for $1,000. So for $19,000, will I push your paperwork? Yeah,
But why should I take you and not her like?
because I'm
whoever-
better than the assistant. And because hopefully you got referred to me. Maybe, right? So like, and this is an objection that I only learned from dealing with Redfin agents when I have listings or an open door agent, you know? Yeah, you go, like, I had one buyer that we were running around looking at all this stuff. And we saw a property once, the Redfin agent was late. Like, we went back for a second thing with some other person that was there the whole open house. And I just kind of like pointed it out, like, hey, you know, it's because this one person with 15 listings with all these people running around. They haven't been in real estate like I have. They haven't sold what I have, they haven't bought what I, you know, help people buy. They're not as experienced as I am. You know, but if someone says like, why should I do the same thing with you for the same amount of money? If your service is the same, then I don't know. I can't tell you, right? But for me, those are my check boxes. You find it yourself, it's more than $2 million, you're pre-approved with my guy, you're in escrow inside of 30 days, deal, great. If I did 12 of those a year, it's $250,000.
So if they get.
And I don't have to leave the
So if
the
they
office.
get, if you get approved from like 2 different lenders, it will get like different numbers, or it will be the same?
Sometimes they'll be different. The interest rates might vary a little bit, right? The service that you get from different lenders is
Yeah,
for sure the
like
same.
maybe I can pre-approve like 1.25 and with other lender 1.5.
Did they look at Rocket Mortgage on their phone when you were at brunch? Like,
No, they got like legit pre.
yeah, if it's a legit pre-approval from a big bank,
Yeah,
right? And like the pre-approval is up and above the amount of the homes that you're looking for,
Yeah.
right? And you wanna like cut a deal with someone, I'm gonna look at that deal and be like, okay, for me, and just for where I'm at, I've gotta make $600 an hour. It's not $600 an hour, I don't take on the project. Maybe if I'm up above my business plan, like at the end of the year, like things are getting weird, and I look at something and someone's like, hey, I got these, you know, circumstances, I don't know that I'm gonna get an escrow in 30 days, but it's because my house is selling. I'm already selling it, but I don't like that agent, you know, and I'll sign an exclusive with you to do the buy side. Well, you know, and it's for $5 million, will you do it for a half a point? Yeah. Sure. Because I'm gonna look at that and be like, hey, half a point, still 25 grand. I'm already at my cap, so I keep 100% of it, right? It's gonna be a slow time in the winter anyways, and I know they have to buy something because they're already in escrow, then like, I'll do that deal. You know, so, but it all depends on where you're at. I get leads and calls for stuff all the time that I look at it and I'm like, no, this isn't gonna make sense. Can't do this, can't do that. Just isn't gonna work. So whether or not you should go after that business depends on this type of stuff. Are they inexperienced?
no, it's the first time.
Okay, so they are inexperienced. So you're dealing with first time buyers, maybe is it a husband and wife?
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm
or
not sure if we're
couple,
married, like, yeah,
okay, so are they on the same page?
I didn't ask, I didn't.
We don't know, okay, what kind of hours are they gonna want you to spend touring them in properties? Is it weird hours? Are you gonna need to sign up for a Supra? Their pre-approvals with a good bank, but they're already coming after your commission? For me, there's red flag 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Okay, thank you.
You see what I mean?
Because they're worried about getting money back and how much money she's gonna get,
I didn't even
right?
get started on this and you're coming for my money.
Yeah.
You know, but I spent a little bit of time last year working for this guy that was like, that had all this stuff pre-qualified and all stuff, you know, everyone else. And he was looking for $10 million, $10 $10 million single family home for sale. I knew it was probably not gonna work out, you know, I got his information pretty tight down there, like kind of figuring it all out, piecing some things together, like, is this the kind of project should I do? It was kind of like my instincts, my gut said like, no, it was a waste of time. But my best commercial client is a CEO of a company. The COO's son needed a house. He had all this crypto money. I was like, this could be fast, but like, I got kicked in the teeth running around trying to do this all and figure the deal out. But I had to do it for that relationship too. Right? This guy says, hey, John, I bought $50 million worth of property with you. My partner's son is looking for a $10 million house. He's gonna fund it for him. You think I can go, well, make sure he doesn't ask for my commission, you know? Like, so every deal that you guys do is going to be different. And every single deal is going to be different, right? But the surprises that your buyers and your sellers are going to encounter, right? Like a lot of them are very predictable. And as you do a lot more of these, like if you could talk to Michael Rosales and say like, hey, out of the 100 phone calls you get from agents, you know, what are like some of the common problems? He's going to give you like a list of 5 or 6 things he just deals with all the time. You know, someone went non-contingent, they didn't want to. Now they're trying to cancel. How do we get our money back? We found this thing out in inspections, do I have to disclose it? Right? Like, so getting out in front of these things that can be surprises or that can be difficult, although very time consuming, right? It's been my experience and like most of the best brokers that I know get out in front of this stuff as quickly as they can. They have basically like workflows. They like triage these things, right? So any questions real fast about like working with buyers and why I think it's important to identify and like, you know, get these things out of the way? That was a good question though, Amit. Like, what do you do when someone's like, hey, I wanna, you know, or like there's a lot of people in Beverlywood that say like, well, you know, we know a bunch of agents. Like if whoever sends it to me first, person I'm gonna use, and like incentivize the community to bring them deals, you know? So like it happens all the time. I know, like I get a listing in Beverlywood and there's like 8 agents coming in. They're like, who are you? How did you get this? Where did you get this relationship from? How did you price it here? You know, whatever. Like it's a very, very competitive, informed community in Beverlywood. So they all talk about real estate, you know, it's like it's a thing. So I'm only bringing up Beverlywood because like, I know that working with a buyer in that community is going to be more challenging than working with a buyer out of my sphere. So what I'm willing to do on commission and time and stuff like that for that type of a buyer is not the same, generally speaking, as like someone that's like in my level 1 sphere, someone I went to college with or something. Okay? But good questions about like commissions and all that other stuff. Okay, now. Am I just like totally ruining the hell out of this? What am I doing?
It's the
Okay.
eraser.
Now, let's talk about negotiating offers and receiving offers. Okay, rules for the sellers, dealing with sellers, the same as the buyer, right? Like, just inform them, this is what this process is gonna look like, right? Like, we go to market, we do the open houses, we're just informing them. We're not giving them like real estate details, like no special information, there's no secret sauce when you're explaining stuff to sellers, right? But just like I do with buyers, I try to get out in front of what these objections and surprises are gonna be with my sellers, right? So what's a very common surprise that a buyer and a buyer's agent might do, right, to you? Give you a super low offer. right? So I'll say, hey, we're gonna go to market, right? Like if we're going for this purchase price, we've agreed is not really supported by the data, then like you should expect a low offer. Here's what it's going to look like. Okay? It's gonna say JA Inc. and or assignee is the buyer. If you see and or assignee, what does that mean when you're receiving offers?
The person that submit the offer can leave himself or to write someone else's name.
It means that, so like, if you guys are younger and you're on YouTube and you're looking at stuff, and people talk about wholesaling, right? And Kristen brings this up too. Kristen should do this whole part probably. Is this means in California, you're not allowed to legally wholesale. You can't open escrow on a property with the intent of selling it to an unaffiliated party. It's illegal in California. Does it happen in California all the time? Yes. What this usually means, right, is that you're dealing with an investor of some sort, right, who plans on in some way, shape, or form being affiliated with the group or person that's ultimately going to buy the property, right? A lot of people will say, Jon Adams and or assignee. This gives the buyer the option to raise money, bring on partners, right? It also allows me as a buyer to put this into a trust, right? Or to put the property into an LLC. I can go from me, John, buying it into an entity actually going on to title and purchasing the property. Okay? But this is a unilateral right that buyers have, right? When I say unilateral, I mean it only goes one way. Sellers can't let someone else take their spot on the contract, right? So if you see this, right, we've got question marks here. We want to know what's going on here, right? Why do you need this ability to give your interest in the property to someone else? So on our offer spectrum, we've got high price, or sorry, all the way down here, we've got low price, right? And we got a great offer is going to have a high price. All the way down here, we don't know who the buyer is. Who is buying? You get an offer and sometimes like without a proof of funds, without a pre-approval, it just says blah, 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 Inc. You're like, who is this? Right? And the form that we have for that, when you're selling for an entity or purchasing for an entity, is representative capacity disclosure. It's a box on the RPA. So that you're writing on behalf of an Inc., right, or something like that, Inc. or an LLC, then you have to check this box on the offer, and then it's automatically in zip form, it's going to say, fill out this rep capacity form. And that rep capacity form should always accompany the offer. And if it doesn't, then you're left in the dark as a listing agent as to like, who is JA Inc. and or assignee? Can I get proof of funds from this? You know, like what do I email them? What is this? Right? So who is buying? Over here on a great offer, with our good price, what else are we gonna have? We're gonna have like a single individual. So we're saying all the things that make a great offer and all the things that make a shady bad offer. Low price. We don't necessarily know who's buying because it's an Inc. or an entity, right? We have long contingency timelines. Right? The best types of offers come with no contingencies. Who wants to tell me what it means when someone has no contingencies?
Take the property as is.
Exactly as is. And the second that my deposit goes into escrow, it basically speaking belongs to the seller. Right? So just because someone writes a non-contingent offer, right, doesn't mean that the deposit belongs to the seller. Legally speaking, it's supposed to belong to the seller, right? But it's not actually 100% the seller's without it being released to them. Okay, so we're gonna say non-contingent, right? And then we're gonna have money released. Really wish I had a different color, but if we're buying $1 million property, it's standard that the EMD be how much? How much is the earnest money deposit? 3%. So how much is that, Connie? 30 grand. It goes into escrow, right? Because we got the buyer over here, and we got the seller over here, right? And all this money goes into escrow. And so the buyer puts in their 30, right? And then when they go non-contingent, they remove all their contingencies. It means the contingencies are met and the buyer does not have an opportunity to back out without losing this 30 grand. But in reality, it's no Siri. But in reality, it doesn't belong to the seller. It's still held in escrow, right? And for it to get released in escrow, you need mutual consent. This is escrow's job, is to just follow the instructions on the contract, right? To protect both parties. So if we go non-contingent and this 30,000 is in escrow, the seller doesn't have it yet. Legally speaking, it belongs to them, right? But for them to get it, we still need the buyer to release it to them, right? So just because someone submits a non-contingent offer, now what you're waiting for is that deposit to get it. Make sure that deposit gets it, right? Once the deposit gets in, if it's non-contingent, you would like it to be released to your seller. Because once this goes up here, it's gone. And unless there's some weird part of disclosure or something, the seller screwed the buyer in some way, the buyer can go sue them for it, right? But more times than not, once it gets into the seller's hands, that's it. Okay. So on our offer spectrum, crappy things, we've got low offers. We don't know who's buying it. It's got these long contingency timelines. It's going to be hard to for us to hold them accountable to these timelines, right? They're going to have your property in escrow for months and months. We're not going to get to make sure that your seller is actually going to get their money, right? Other things that we have on here are just, what if someone says the deposit is going to be 1%? You're like, why are we having such a small deposit? Over here, I've seen deposits as high as 50%. 50% deposit, immediately released, non-contingent. It's this one person, right? And then we've got all the docs in here that really matter for offers. So if you're representing sellers, what docs do we need? We need the actual offer. Okay. What kind of proof of funds do we need, Connie?
Statement showing that they have enough accounts to cover
That who has enough in what account to cover what?
the buyers have enough money in the account to cover the down payment or the EMD and the closing costs.
Yep, okay. So if this person submits an offer on our $1 million house, right? And they send you the proof of funds for 28,000, They're like 300,000 short, right?
Yeah.
They're way short, because we probably need 200, if they're getting a conventional loan, 20% down, right? 200, or just in with that, okay? So we need to see 200 grand in there, right? That is, so the EMD is applied to the down payment, so it's not the EMD plus the down payment, right? So we have the down payment of 200 grand, and then we also want to see some reserves. What if we know they need 200,000 down, and the closing cost are, let's say, 2%, 20,000. And they send it to us for 220,000 and $1. How are we gonna do this? How's this gonna work, right? So low proof of funds also goes over here, right? So then what's gonna go on the other side? High proof of funds, lots of cash. And so we have all of these data points. How much cash are they showing? How much is the offer for? What are the contingency timelines? What contingencies are there, right? How long is the escrow? Who is the buyer gonna be? And that's why I say that every offer is on a spectrum, right? Because some of the people that pay all cash and write offers non-contingent, which are all very good things, also are willing to pay a little bit less. Because it's more convenient for your seller, right? It's like, hey, this person shows me big proof of funds, and you guys are gonna deal with this a lot. Big proof of funds, non-contingent, they'll give you money release, they got a 15-day close, but the price is all the way over here. Is that better than, for your seller, an offer that's over here that has a 45-day close and an inspection contingency and an appraisal contingency and financing contingency? Depends on what.
Price, what's big is the difference?
How big is the price difference,
Yeah.
right? And then what else?
The seller will wait.
Is the seller willing to wait? What does the fast close mean to them? Why are they selling it in the first place? Right?
So who decide on of how long the escrow will be? The
It's
buyer
a-
when he submit the offer, he say like,
Yep, we're gonna do that. We're gonna, so now we're halfway there. Guess let's go ahead and get into it. So basically, you asked a question about the request for repairs and a notice to perform.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk about like some like ironing out escrow details. This is, so what we're gonna get into is more of like your purple belt in real estate, right? Who decides the length of the escrow? The buyer when they submit the offer, right? Before you open escrow, the buyer has all the authority, or sorry, the seller has all of the authority. Meaning, whatever terms the seller wants in escrow, the seller needs to agree to all of those before you open escrow.
So the buyer just dictates, it will determine the length of an escrow, right? The buyer or the seller?
The contract will determine the length of the escrow. The buyer is going to submit saying, hey, 60 days. And if the seller counters and says 45 days, and they all agree to it, then it's a 45-day escrow.
Okay.
So your sellers only have authority to really negotiate before you get into escrow. Totally killing this back. Yeah. Okay. So the sellers have all the power before escrow. The buyers have all the power in escrow. And there is one caveat to this that's extremely important, right? So the sellers don't get to negotiate anymore. If we go into escrow to $1 million and the inspections come back beautiful, and they decide like, oh, we should have sold it for $1.1 million, nothing you can do. The only remedy that sellers have in escrow is to the timelines. Okay? And so this is a notice to perform. Agents hate a notice to perform. They hate it so much, okay? Because how this works, basically, let's say we get into escrow and we have a 10-day inspection.
John, there's new markers too.
Thank you so much. This is gonna be just a pink board and like, we're gonna end up with pink. Thank you. Okay, so we got a 10-day inspection. No, I don't want to write over it. I'm gonna write next to it. Okay. What's the date today? It's Wednesday the 9th. Okay, so what's 10 days from today? Huh? Good question, son. Okay. So the 19th is when our inspection contingency is supposed to be up. What day of the week is it, honey?
Wednesday.
Saturday.
Saturday. Okay. So, what happens if we go into escrow, we agree on this 10-day inspection, and the 19th comes, right, and Connie's buyer is not ready to remove their inspection contingency? What can I do if I'm the seller?
Nothing.
Nothing. You know what I can do? Call my agent, be like, what the hell? Okay, this person is dragging it out. The main reason that this inspection contingency takes so long is, what if on day 7, Connie sends me a request for repairs for $100,000. You know, Connie, this is $1 million house. You think my clients are gonna put $100,000 into fixing it for you? You're crazy. What a coincidence. Your first offer was at $900,000. So you just went to escrow thinking that you're so slick, you're just gonna ask for $100,000 back, and you're gonna get down to the purchase price that your clients wanted. And I knew this all along. You're shady when you got here, right? You showed me a crappy proof of funds. It took you a while to get me the pre-approval. The wife did not even come to the home yet. This felt like a crappy offer, right? My sellers are gonna be surprised. When your clients get surprised, they get pissed, right? So I get this from Connie on day 7, and I call her, you must be kidding me. Day 8, nothing happens. She goes, hey, John, where's the counter? And I just go dark on her. And on day 9, she says, hey, John, what's up? And I don't answer, right? And then day 10 comes, right? Which is the 19th. I'm gonna tell Connie, hey, our seller response to the request for repairs is $20,000. We'll give you 20 grand, not 100 grand, right? Because Connie sat with her buyers and she figured out exactly what the lowest amount is that we're gonna go after for, right? So maybe Connie's buyers say, hey, Connie, we trust you to negotiate the way that we've heard you can, right? We'll move forward as long as we can get 40 grand, but no less. Right? Then the buyers get nervous, they're sweating, they know this inspection contingency comes. I send this to Connie, she right away counters me right back, 80,000. since we're at this day 10, when the inspection contingency is supposed to be removed, right? I can now pull out my trump card as seller's representatives. And I'm gonna send my notice to perform. You're supposed to remove your inspection contingency today. I don't care whether you're at 20 grand or 100 grand or 10 grand, whatever. My clients don't accept the terms, right? We went to escrow at $1 million. I told you you're buying it as is. So I'm gonna have my client sign this and send this to Connie. The notice to perform means the sellers, after delivery, you got 2 business days and then the sellers can cancel escrow. So the only thing the only ammo sellers have in escrow is the notice to perform. Okay? So if the buyers fall behind on timelines, the loan's not gonna happen, things, hey, we need an extension, screw you, all I can do is this notice to perform, right? It's all sellers can do, right? Agents don't like sending it, right? Because it means, hey, like now this escrow might fall apart. I love sending these, right? Because when you're representing the seller, because buyer's agents hate getting something like this. Because you know what Connie's clients might be telling her? If we don't get 60 grand, we're out. And so I send Connie this. Now she knows she's gonna have a tough conversation with the clients, right?
Can her response to the notice to perform be 60 grand?
Yep. The notice to perform only starts the clock to give the seller the authority, right? This is
To cancel escrow.
to cancel escrow if the buyers aren't following their timelines.
If the buyers don't respond within 48 hours.
If the buyers don't meet, that's a good question. If they don't meet the contingencies
Of the seller.
on time. So let's go through this scenario all the way through. Let's say we still had 17-day appraisal and 21-day loan. Right? We're on day 10, which is the 19th day of the month, right? I can't send them the notice to perform to remove their appraisal contingency.
Because they still have 7 days left.
Can I do it for the loan? No, we still got 21 days, right? So I can say you have to do this. In the instance in which this happens most often, right, in today's climate, is the inspection contingency. Because we're going to escrow, we've agreed to terms, we have this meeting of the minds, it's gonna be $1 million, and then all Connie's clients find out these things, and the inspectors get in there, and the guy gets down there and he goes, mold, right? And she's like, we need 100 grand. I'm like, well, we don't have to take this, but we do have to sit here and wait for them to meet their inspection contingency timeline. Your sellers do not have to offer anything at all to buyers in the request for repairs. They don't even need to legally respond. It says it right on there. Sellers do not have to give credit, they don't have to legally respond, whatever, right? Yeah, they don't have to do anything. My sellers can just sit here. But what do they risk, really? What if I send this notice to perform, and Connie's clients get this, and they're like, what is this? Say, well, it gives the sellers the authority to cancel escrow if we can't come to terms on time, or if we don't just agree to waive our inspection contingency. So this is like, that's why I said, like, it's their only thing, this is the only ammo you got, you're a listing agent, someone's messing with your timelines, this is all you can do.
What if they're like, okay, we'll.
We'll waive it, and then now we're going on to these next things. If I send this, bam, Connie's like, oh, she already pulled her calculator out and added up how much the commission was gonna be, which you guys should never do, it's like bad juju, right? She's already thinking like, where I'm gonna spend this, no, don't worry, I got it, and like, then she gets this notice to perform her email, she's like, oh, I mean, you're all Venmoing me for dinner, like, this isn't gonna work, right? This is all the sellers can do, send that notice to perform. When I take on a listing, this is the first thing I talk about. Our only remedy, right, for buyers dragging their feet, or screwing around with negotiations and stuff like that, is to cancel escrow. The only means that we have to actually do that is if they're not sticking to their timelines, right? And we send them a notice to perform. Once you're non-contingent, this isn't a notice to perform anymore, it's demand to close.
What
Yes.
if that property is not getting any offers and that was the best offer that they got? Will they still send that notice to perform?
To me, depends.
Can you only send a notice to perform the last day?
In practice, it's usually only ever sent on the day that it's supposed to be removed. You can legally send it 2 business days in advance of that date.
Can you send multiple notices?
You would send on one notice to perform for all of these, for all of the different items. So if someone's gonna buy like a, tear down and they want it appraised because they're gonna get a hard money loan after they close or something, and they have like inspection and appraisal contingencies only, and they're on the same deadline, notice to perform says like, effectively, we're gonna cancel escrow on you if you don't insert select box, whatever, right? So like the deposit doesn't come in, notice to perform.
Thanks.
And remember, the soonest you can do it is 2 business days in advance of that timeline. So in some instances, I've sent the notice, we open escrow, I send the notice to perform for the deposit. If we don't get this deposit from you on the day that's due, we're blowing out.
What if they're desperate to sell it?
Then what do you think? They're not gonna do
Sell
it?
Right?
This is a
I
bluff.
mean, they're not gonna
This
send
is
it
a
back.
bluff. I'm bluffing Connie all along. I'm just gonna let, you send me 100 grand, your buyer's gonna have to sweat this out. And now that we get here, I can send them the notice. Couldn't send it up here when I got this ridiculous request. So this is like the brokerage piece. And this is why I say you have to take Kristen's classes so that you understand what leverage you have and don't have with this.
Yeah.
Right? When I first got into residential at all, in the commercial world, all these contingencies pass, they expire on these times, on these deadlines. So they're referred to as passive contingencies. Your 10-day inspection contingency, you send me this for $100,000, you get to day 11, that's it, it's waived, automatically it's waived. Clients don't have to sign anything, there's no negotiating or anything, right? So our commercial deals get weird. Because these contingency timelines are passive, they'll automatically expire on those days. So I've seen a lot of cases where residential agents are using a different form for a multifamily property, or you're helping your client buy an office building or a retail shop or something, and some savvy commercial agent will put it on a different form, which is an AIR form, which is standard in commercial, right? And the AIR form is not a car form. It's not friendly like the state of California. Mean forms. Right? Representing buyers are angry forms, right? In the AIR form, all these contingency timelines automatically expire. They just lapse. So you've done all these deals. You're this big residential agent. No, don't worry. Your 500 grand is safe. We haven't waived our contingencies. And you go back and look at the form, and the form says they expire unless you notify buyer and seller and escrow holder. What? This actually happened to an agent at the Hollywood Hills office that I was kind of involved with. He goes, hey, have you know about these? Big multifamily agent, done a lot of commercial deals. This client got 500 grand non-contingent in a property that turned out that the loan was not going to go through. So mediation, arbitration, escrow goes, well, it says right here, they expire. the mediators or the mediator was like, yep, there you go. Give it back to that client. And this is why you need errors and omissions insurance, in case you mistakenly do something bad and it costs your clients money, and if it was an honest mistake, then the office has insurance to cover it. If you get in a weird spot, in a sticky situation, you're talking about big deposits, that's what Michael is here for, is to protect you guys. You get in a weird contract thing, you see some words and some language, you're not sure what it means, don't do the deal. Okay. So notice to perform, right, is the seller's only remedies. Like you gotta stay on the tight timeline. But she says, well, what if it's only offer? And this is a pretty serious bluff, right? I'm gonna kick you out of escrow if we don't like your number here, if we can't arrange. Usually when this happens, it's because you've got some sellers that are very informed about this process. They feel like they've been getting screwed with by the buyer the whole time, you know, and the buyers aren't sticking to their timelines. Now you send this out, right? You can still negotiate. The seller doesn't have to cancel escrow. It doesn't mean that the seller is canceling escrow. It just means the seller has the authority to cancel escrow if you keep screwing around. Or you come at me with some BS number like 100. Get out of here.
Do they have to, the notice to perform has to be sent before it can cancel, the whole escrow cancel, right?
Yep. Whenever it gets sent, 2 business days, and then still not on a weekend. Right? So usually if this gets sent, it's like we're 1 day past. And Connie's buyers are like, oh, we want to do a radon inspection. I'm like, we had all this time to do this, and now you want to, well, we saw it. Like, okay, well, maybe I ask you to waive your inspection contingency subject to successful clearance of a radon test. Right? Or maybe I just tell you, kick rocks, because you notice to perform. But it all depends, right? You got all these different levers. All the seller can do is this. All the seller can do is cancel escrow. Right? If Connie's buyers go, all right, send a notice to perform. They go, okay, here we go. We waived our inspection. Now here I am just waiting for this appraisal contingency. And then now there I am again, waiting for the loan. Right? So we get to the loan, the appraisal's not in yet. Maybe it is, Connie's telling me it's not. Well, all I can do is what? I can't kick her out of escrow. We can't change the purchase price. I can't say this is inconveniencing my clients and I need this. I can just send a notice to perform. So when you're representing sellers, right, you want timelines to be as short as possible, right? You want as big a proof of funds, but remember and inform your sellers and your buyers that every offer is on a spectrum, right? You're probably not in a regular old single family home gonna get the highest price from the same person that's gonna give you the shortest contingency timelines, right? Usually people that pay the most for single family homes are getting a loan. Usually how it works. It's usually not all cash. If I'm representing a buyer and I know we're all cash, like we're gonna come in and present better terms than everyone else that's at the same purchase price that has a loan, right? So informing your clients, letting them know what types of offers you anticipate receiving and what the pros and cons are for each of those types of offers, it all matters, right? So when I'm working with a seller, I will abstract the offer and all of the different offers in the same way that I'll abstract the request for repairs. So whether or not you say, hey, we have the first open house on the Saturday and Sunday, right? And are we gonna review offers as they come in? Are we gonna do a call for offers? Call for offers or an offer deadline is when, if I'm selling a hot property, it looks like there's gonna be lots of interest and it's important to my clients to sell it fast, right? My favorite timelines for these types of things, I like to put a property up Sunday night. Sunday night. The agents come in on Monday and Tuesday, they look at stuff, right? It gives them a little bit of time to get their clients to the open house. And then throughout that weekend, hopefully, the markets have plenty of time to see it. And you have a couple big open house days and you get some offers in. When the market was crazy in the middle of last year, that's what everyone would do. They put it up on a Monday or Tuesday, and then just tell the sellers like, we're gonna send out a counter on Monday afternoon. And so they do a call for offers or an offer deadline. Say, hey, we're gonna review all offers on Monday at 4:00. And all the buyers in the market with their 20 offers out would be sitting there all anxious and they're working with their agents and like, Connie, did it get accepted? What's going on? And she's like, look, we're gonna get countered, right? And then last year in the middle of the year, these multiple counters would come back. And where do you think we are on the spectrum for when the sellers have the decision before escrow? They go up, no appraisal contingency, no financing contingency, right? The purchase price has to be on this side of the spectrum, right? In a super seller's market, they're going to determine all of these things. And in today's market, you mainly are concerned with the financing and these buyers' ability to afford the property, right? So you got to see good proof of funds. We've got to see a good appraisal, right? We've got to see the reserves. If someone writes an offer and it says and or assignee or in this trust or whatever, make sure that the bank account matches up with, and the proof of funds matches up with the buyer. A guy that I work with sometimes, it was like a big investor, and we've like bought and sold some property together and stuff like that. When he went to first buy his home, right after he got a real estate license, buying his first single family home, has some good family money, right? He submitted his offer. His name was Bob J, right? And when he submitted his offer in, the proof of funds was from Mark J, his dad. And the listing agent didn't notice. But for him to buy the home, he submitted the offer, all cash, no appraisal, no financing contingency, right? But he needed to get an appraiser there for his loan, right? So what this guy did, his agent, against my advice, said, okay, we'll do a 7-day inspection. Okay, if it's all cash, you don't need an appraisal or a financing contingency, right? But this is when the market was going crazy. We did a 7-day inspection, right? He said, I'll meet the top price. He uses what's referred to as an escalation clause, which is something you can put in offers that says, we're gonna go up to this amount and we'll pay $10,000 more than the next closest one, which is like crazy. I hate using that, right? But he looked at the dates and saw, okay, this counter came back on a Saturday. So 7 days for our inspection, even if I get the notice to perform on a Saturday, right, because I'm late, then the soonest they could cancel was Monday, Tuesday business day, that next day, that Wednesday was the first day. So when we looked at the calendar, we figured out we actually had like 11 days, assuming we got the notice to perform on day 7. So we snuck Kevin's appraiser in there to get the appraisal done, right? And we got the appraisal done. Now we knew we were good. And so we dragged our feet waiting for this notice to perform so that the buyer could get his appraisal done in the inspection time. Super like sneaky, the listing agent was pissed, but he got the house. The listing agent wouldn't realize that the proof of funds was not in his name, it was actually in his father's name, right? Then like they might have asked a couple more questions and the sellers wouldn't have been so pissed, right? Because when you had this crazy market, you took all these offers in and you take one and it goes out of escrow, what do you think everyone else is gonna do? Are they all gonna go back up to that same price? They're gonna come in a little bit lower. So we had all this leverage over them with these timelines and these days, but I'm sure Kristen would say it's illegal to have an appraiser represent themselves as someone else and get in there, whatever. Bad idea, but the point is, when you're representing sellers, be super, super diligent about these timelines, right? And when you represent buyers, understand, right, that this is all they have to, this is the only remedy that they have. So the most important thing you can do when you're working with buyers, when you open escrow, is get the deposit in right away. You open escrow, get the deposit in, right? The second most important thing, I'm gonna go through the buy side stuff really quickly. I'm gonna pick up a little bit on it. Number one, get the deposit in fast.
Working with the seller, right?
Nope, working with the seller, but also if you're working with your buyers. And because this is your first impression for escrow and how it's gonna go. You go, okay, get the deposit in fast. The second one is get the disclosures fast. Same thing with the buyer, with the seller, right? They've got a certain period of time to review the disclosures that's called out in contract. But why is it important for buyers to get the seller disclosures quickly?
But if any material factors can affect your like desirable of the property, they can decide they don't want it, if they will know there is like a big problem with the plumbing or whatever it is.
Plumbing is super common. What if I say, what if we only got a 7-day inspection contingency and we open escrow and I'm kind of like, we're just like hanging out and we go day 1, day 2. I go, let me call the general inspector. The general inspector's like, yeah, I'll be there on Thursday. And then I get my disclosures on Thursday because everything's just a little late and a little sloppy. And in the disclosure, it says, redid the plumbing with such and such a contractor who's also the guy that did our roofing and all this stuff because there was a leak. I'm like, oh, well, I wish I knew that when I was scheduling my inspections. So always when you're representing buyers, try and get these disclosures as fast as you can. Right? Because then you might find something in disclosures that you're gonna want to get a special inspector for. Okay? But same thing, buyers and sellers, get the deposit in and out. And if you're working with seller and you know they're gonna be slow on the paperwork or they're a very busy person, whatever, try and get these disclosures done. Because your clock can't start ticking to hold them to their inspection contingencies until they have the disclosures. Okay? I wrote an offer today for a guy on a house that was built in the 50s. It's like this beautiful craftsman home. And I wrote the offer and then she goes, oh, we're still working on the disclosures. I'm like, oh. It's like this super old big home with an attic and a basement. And it's all like rewired and redone since it's so old. And I'm just like, I cannot wait to see like what is in these disclosures about termites and what's broken, what needs to be fixed. I'm like, ugh. But at least I'm gonna get them in time to order the right inspections that we're gonna do. And remember, these are your first impressions. So if your buyers don't send in a deposit fast, or they're not gonna send it in on time, what kind of response do you think you're gonna get when you ask for a request for repairs? Slow. They're already pissed. Where's the deposit? There's nothing worse than going into escrow and being at day 4 or 5, and you're representing the seller, and they go, oh, is the deposit in? And you don't know, or it's not in yet. It is the worst. It's only ever happened to me one time. Now I'm like, is the deposit ready? Make sure they get the deposit ready to go. It's a big property, it's expensive. I might not have the 150 G's sitting in my checking account, straight up wired in, right? They gotta wire it because it's a big amount. Like some banks, you gotta go into the bank. You got a big wealthy client that's extremely successful. Make sure they carve out time in their schedule so they can go to the bank and time to actually send the wire off. Right? So like, it's your first impression for the buyers and the sellers. get the deposit in, deliver the disclosures quickly or get them back quickly, right? And then when it gets to the request for repairs, iron out the differences between an upgrade and a repair. The old AC works. It's 15 years old, but it works. That's a repair. You're gonna have to replace it in the next 5 or 6 years. Honestly, like HVAC stuff, heaters and stuff like that is always the most difficult, because in everyone's mind, if you're representing buyers, you're like, they're gonna have to fix this. It's an expense. It's basically broken. It's old. It's gonna break. But in sellers' minds, it works. Why should I have to buy you a new water heater for your next 15 years? So we'll pick up here, actually on Friday. It's gonna be Friday we have to do it, because I gotta go to the ALC meeting tomorrow. So it'll be Friday from 2 to 4.
So tomorrow, no class?
Tomorrow, no class. Friday from 2 to 4.
I don't think we covered that.
Oh, yeah, it's better than, I can't.
Oh, maybe we'll do.
It says office.